Hi, I'm Peg Tillery. Welcome to another episode of Gardening with Peg. Today we're going to talk about how do you pick out plants in a nursery. So the first thing you need to know or decide is where's the plant going to go? If you're like me and you've been gardening for a while, or if you're a new gardener, I go to a nursery and all I want to do is bring home plants. In fact, writing for the magazine is kind of expensive for me because I always bring home plants and then I have to figure out where to put them. So my advice to you is really figure out where you're going to put the plants. And the real issue is how are you going to water them, what kind of soil do they need, and also do they need sun or shade, how are they going to look with the other plants around them. But today the main message is how do you pick out the dang things once you're in the nursery. One of the things also to know is at the end of the season, every nursery has plants that look a little bit motley. So that doesn't mean that you're at a bad nursery. All of our local nurseries are really good, and you can ask their staff excellent questions that you'll get excellent answers, and a lot of them have favorite plants that they'll tell you about, and that might help you decide. So when you're in a nursery, the plants are usually divided by shady areas or sunny areas. They also usually have sections for perennials and woody plants and trees, for evergreen plants, deciduous plants. So you'll know that too, and that helps you in your selection. You want to watch to see how often does a nursery water, and you'll be able to tell that by touching and lifting the pots. And some plants are pretty vigorous growers. For instance, this is a sedge. We also know it as a carex. And it's always, when you look at the pot, it's always going to have roots coming out the bottom. Always, almost always, even if it just got off the nursery truck or came out of the greenhouse where they grow them. But you can feel, like with this plant, with this particular pot, I can squish this. And so that means the roots are really healthy. You can see them. There's plenty of soil in between and around them. And so this is a really good specimen, even though it's got roots at the bottom. When you get it home, you might cut these off and then plant it. And when you plant it, you've seen videos, and we'll do some videos on how to really plant plants into the garden. And when you plant it, you're just going to loosen the roots up. You'll find ground covers, and they are, you don't have to take them out. They're pretty loose in the container. A lot of times they're in a softer type sided container, and this is a really healthy looking plant. Remember that stuff is towards the end of its growing season, so you'll see some dried out foliage, but that's the nature of plants right now. We're filming this in almost at the end of August. This is an annual. It's a gazania. I love gazinias. And it'll last until the first really hard frost. But annuals grow super, super fast. They have a very short lifespan. You wouldn't try to lift them out of their pot. They also, you'll be able to tell by looking if the nursery took good care of it. This one's had good care. They always will have roots sticking out the bottom, always, except if they just came in on the truck. But that's their nature. And again, you'll loosen its roots up. You'll put it in a container or out in your garden for some great fall color. But just remember, annuals have a finite growing season, usually just a matter of a couple months. Sometimes they only put bloom on, like for a month or so, and then all you'll have for the rest of the season, whatever season you've chosen, is foliage. When you're picking an annual or even a perennial, I personally like to make sure that it has a bunch of buds waiting to come on. And so if it was an annual and it only had one flower, I would choose another same type of plant, same type of container, but with more buds just waiting to pop up. So that way you're extending the amount of time that you could enjoy the bloom. With a perennial, which is something that's in your garden and it'll die back over the winter months, and unless it's a winter type plant, it'll die back and then it comes back again in the spring, summer, or fall, depending on what season is its bloom time. With flowering perennials, with any flowering plant, I like to actually get a plant that's blooming when I buy it. So I know what its blooms look like. I know that it's already bloomed once for me, and I know it'll continue to bloom. Other people like to choose stuff that's not blooming yet. I've once or twice purchased a plant that wasn't blooming at all, and it took years for it to bloom, because plants bloom when they're more mature, not when they're babies, unless they've been encouraged to bloom in a greenhouse or something. So now this one's a Rudbeckia. They're also called Black-Eyed Susan. It's a young plant, so it's towards the end of its blooming time. So I would still purchase this because I know it's going to bloom. Absolutely, positively, it's going to bloom every year, come up every year. This is a hydrangea. I always buy hydrangeas when they're blooming. This one is one of the new ones called Pistachio. And hydrangeas are a really interesting plant. Their blossoms change their color. And pistachio, for sure, is something that you'd want to put near where you're walking past it all the time, so you could watch how it changes its blooms. And so the tip to flowering type plants is buy them with several blooms on them, or a bunch of buds that are going to develop into blooms. At least that's my tip. This is one last plant to show you. And know that some pots are really heavy, and that is just sometimes the potting medium. Some growers, particularly woody plants and acid-loving plants, to keep diseases from happening, there's a lot of wood in the soil, well, the potting medium that they have put the plant into. So you'll need to really loosen up the roots when you plant it. Now I put this plant out because it looks, there's a term called chlorotic, and it just means that something that's got green leaves will go kind of washed out. This plant is supposed to look this way. It's really cool. It is, and I wanted to show you that. Know what the plant's supposed to look like in its real environment. If this plant was supposed to be all green, if that was its real environment and its real growing habit, then you wouldn't bring it home. I mean, we're optimistic sometimes, but you really don't want to be so optimistic that you buy plants that are going to die, because then after a while you'd get really discouraged, wouldn't you? So this plant is it's a type of a cornus, dogwood family, and it's called midwinter fire dogwood, and it's Cornus sanguinea midwinter fire. Know your plant, know where you want to put it, be a wise consumer, talk to really good qualified nursery staff if you're stumped or have questions, and sometimes you can just go have a look and go home and think about it and then go back with your excellent list that you've prepared.